I would like to welcome everybody here to our specially called board meeting for this evening, where we will discuss, we have a couple things on the agenda, e-learning days versus emergency days, and school district communication. To get things started here, we are actually going to start with a roll call. Here. All right, we do have a quorum, so we can get started. Do we have a, okay, we have a flag up here. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the first thing that we're going to talk about tonight is e-learning days versus emergency days. Just to let everybody know how this is kind of going to go. We're going to give individuals an opportunity to share their perspective on things. We're going to start with Mr. Blessman. If anybody does have anything to say, anybody on the board, anybody in the administration, you can come up to the podium if you want. Calvin does have a handheld, so he can bring that around if you want to speak. Anybody that's here with us from the community tonight, same goes, we'll have you use the handheld because only what's spoken into the mics tonight is going to go out on the broadcast. So this is being streamed, so we want to make sure that people at home are able to hear what's being discussed as well. So e-learning days versus emergency days, we're going to get started with Mr. Blessman explaining why we're talking about that here tonight.
So if you've been following our board meetings, in December, I shared the e-learning plan with the school board. When we did an e-learning plan back in 2020, they were good for 3 years. First time I'd ever done an e-learning plan, to my knowledge, first time anybody in the area had ever done an e-learning plan. And it expired this fall. We were informed by the ROE that it had expired and we need to have it renewed. So to have it renewed, you have to post it in the paper, and then you have to take board action on an e-learning plan. So by the time I went to do it in December and posted in the paper, we didn't have enough days. The e-learning plan had to be in the paper 10 days before the board meeting. In December, our board meeting is the second Wednesday instead of the third Wednesday. It's the only month of the year it's like that, and that's because of the holiday. We have a lot of people who like to travel, and so we bump it 1 week earlier. So we said then we'd have to do it in January. When we left for break, we knew that the day we came back, we had to have it submitted by noon so that it would be put in the paper with our 10-day notice before the board meeting. Bobby came into my office that morning and said, we have a problem. The newspaper changed the deadline. It used to be Thursday by noon. Now it was Tuesday by noon. So we looked at when it would be able to be put in the paper. And again, it was going to be 9 days before the board meeting. The rule is 10 days. So at the board meeting, I informed the board of that. And I said, the one way we can get it approved sooner is if we have a special board meeting just for that. And that was February 5th. And some of you were there. And that was the only thing on the agenda that night, was to approve the e-learning plan. Then the discussion became, when are we going to use e-learning versus emergency days? So I will start the discussion because I'll give you my belief, and about 50% of you are probably going to disagree with it. I believe you should all agree with this. Face-to-face learning is the best for kids. This country is spending billions of dollars to address learning loss due to e-learning. And I know people are going to say, well, 5 days versus, a whole semester of e-learning, that's different. And you're right, it is. But I still think face-to-face learning is what is best for kids. If you go back to 2019, we had 13 snow days that year, and we only had 5 emergency days, and there was no e-learning plan back then. And so the days after 5 were counted as act of God days. And so students missed out on educational opportunities for all of those days that we wrote off as act of God days. So I think we need an e-learning plan because I believe e-learning is much better than no learning. And when you do active God days, that's exactly what you get, is no learning. In our calendar after 2019, we've had 8 emergency days, where before we had 5. This year, if you look at the calendar that was already board approved for next year, we went back to 5 emergency days. And that's because now that we have an e-learning plan, we have the opportunity to take up to 5 e-learning days. And that's something I don't think a lot of people knew when we were doing the e-learning plan. There is no disaster proclamation by the governor. This isn't like before where you could just take the whole year and do e-learning and they let districts determine whether they went back to face-to-face or they did full-time e-learning or a hybrid of that. This is limited to 5 days. So in our current school calendar for next year, we have 5 emergency days, and because we have an e-learning plan, we can use up to 5 e-learning. This is my 31st year in education, and I think 3 times we've had to use active God days. So this isn't a very common thing. I mean, January was, the timing was terrible, where last year we did get snow, but it was on the weekends. So timing of storms is huge for us. Julie sitting here, Julie Law, our transportation director, we do a lot of early morning driving, back roads. When it starts and when it stops is really important to us because we're in contact with the road commissioners and they're telling us if they can get it cleared in time or they can't. It's important for our crews here because when you come to school at 7:30 in the morning, our crews have been here usually since 3 in the morning because we clear teacher parking, student parking, we clear the church parking lot, C.R. Hanna, across the street from C.R. Hanna, middle school, teacher lot, middle school, big lot, not to mention all the sidewalks and entryways. And that takes a lot of time. So that sometimes also determines whether or not we can have school. In our e-learning plan, there's a couple things that may limit us to when we could use an e-learning day. One of the things is back to timing. If we wake up in the morning and it was supposed to rain, but it was freezing rain and we have ice, that is not enough time for our teachers to plan for an e-learning day. Now you can say, well, maybe it is. And being a unit district, we have huge differences in what our teachers have to do. E-learning day for kindergarten and first grade looks a lot different than e-learning for physics, for chemistry. Having e-learning for 5-year-olds versus 18-year-olds, what you can expect from an 18-year-old versus what you can expect from a 5-year-old, those things are different too. So there are a lot of challenges with this. And when those decisions are made, they're not made lightly. So moving forward, I will tell you my preference, when possible, would be to use emergency days. Now I have a head of maintenance that's probably watching on the computer, and he would disagree with that. 5 snow days took a week away from their summer help or their summer work. And if you've been around here in the summer, we do a lot. And snow days are really hard on them because every day I take is one less day they have to finish all the projects they're doing. Asbestos tile removal, putting roofs on buildings, just simply stripping and waxing floors. That's a lot of work, takes them a lot of time. So I'm very aware of the difficulty snow days creates for them as well. So I guess my point is there is no perfect answer. No matter what I do, decision we make, it causes difficulty for some. But the reason I say I'm for emergency days over e-learning, I think that's what's best for kids. I think that's what's best for education. And I think that's what we're here for. So that's my input.
Thank you, Mr. Blessman. So I just wanted to, I was unable to make the special meeting where we approved the e-learning plan. I just want to clarify for anybody listening, when Mr. Blessman says his perspective is to use the emergency days, so he's talking about taking snow days and then utilizing those emergency days at the back of the calendar, up to 5 of them, with the potential to have any additional snow days be e-learning days. Before we open it up to the floor, does anybody else on the board or administration have anything that they would like to share, any perspectives? All right. Is there anyone here with us tonight who would like to share their perspectives on this? One of the things, back when COVID happened, my kids were in high school and middle school at the time. And one of the things that I didn't really think about until this came up a few months ago was the impact that e-learning would have on elementary aged children. And until that meeting came up and we didn't have a plan, I didn't realize that there were people who didn't like the e-learning. Like, I didn't realize that was a problem. Like, everybody that's on here, all of us board members are representatives of the community, but we all have our circles that we are in. And so people that are generally the same age as our kid, like who have kids that are the same age as our kids, are the ones we interact with. So those are the people I was talking to. We have to seek shelter. So the elementary school thing was something I hadn't thought about. So that's a different perspective. It's a good perspective. So rather than us deciding what we should do as a board, we wanted to seek input to know what other people thought, what you thought was the best thing for your kids, for your students, for your buildings, in regard to e-learning versus emergency days. And now is the time for you to speak up. We need a mic.
If I put my parent hat on, e-learning is not a problem for my child because my wife is at home. And she can help my student when he gets up in the morning. She can make sure he gets his homework done. So not a problem. But we have a lot of students, especially younger students, that go to daycare, and to expect daycares to make sure that their students are doing the equivalent of up to 5 hours of instructional learning is a pretty big ask. And then if those parents work all day and then come home and then they have to help their student with that educational instruction, that's a pretty tough ask. For my situation, it works, but not for a lot of people's. It does not.
Calvin.
Does everybody have access to internet that they can, be able to get this information to them?
Yep, that's a good question. For individuals in the district who do not have access to internet, we do have the ability to provide hotspots so that they can have internet access from home. Calvin, do you know how many hotspots we currently have?
As far as I know, we currently have, I believe, 12 hotspots available. My only comment past that is if an e-learning day is a short-term notice thing, getting those hotspots out may be more of an issue.
So would we just issue those normally? Would a student have that for the entire year? I don't know how that works.
During e-learning, they had them for extended time periods, but because of the substantial cost for having 6 to 12 hotspots active that are not in use, we've collected them currently and they're handed out on a need basis.
Okay.
What Joe just asked was if I can expand on what the IT department did during the COVID years. We set up a public internet Wi-Fi network and pointed wireless access points out into the parking lots of all of our school buildings so that anybody who needed internet access for any e-learning days could drive in or bike in and sit outside of the building and hop on the wireless and do whatever they needed that way.
So having wireless access in the parking lots wouldn't do much on snow days probably, but as far as the access for those without who might not have it at home. Does that answer your question? Okay. Good question. Thank you. Anybody else? I know we do have some, I'm not going to try to put anybody on the spot. We have some high school teachers, we have some elementary school teachers here. I don't know if you wanted to share your perspectives on any of this, because I think it's different, could potentially be different at the building. Although if you agree with Mr. Blessman's assessment that the 5 emergency days would be the best thing to use to start, you know, Mr. Lister.
Yeah, Andrew Lister, Orion High School teacher, teach English. I will mention that I know some of the people in our building appreciate having the flexibility and the opportunity to use e-learning days when we need to. Coming from my personal perspective, and mine's a little different than some of the other teachers in my building, I teach dual credit courses. The majority of my course load is dual credit courses, and lost days for the seniors are lost days in total because Blackhawk College has a final due date, and we have to follow that final due date for Blackhawk College. So it makes it more challenging when I don't have at least the option, when the conditions are right, as we've laid out in our plan that we will hopefully follow, to have that option. So that has been helpful, at least in my circumstance.
And I guess I would say this: if we would use 3 or 4 snow days, the last one I would probably be a little more protective of. And if we knew scenario polar vortex is coming Friday, plan for e-learning, because there may be something that would come in the future that wouldn't allow us to use the e-learning because of the timing thing. So having that snow day there would be nice, because again, either one of those options is better than an active God day, which is no instruction.
Calvin.
Is there a possibility of us giving out the hotspots to the students from like November to March? Checking them out, like can we check out a book?
Calvin, okay, so that's a good question. I'm sure that it's a possibility. Do you know what is the fee for the hotspots usage based, or is it?
It's like a cell phone line. It's keeping the line active. So we would need to activate the hotspots through Verizon before handing them out. So that is certainly doable. I do not have any pricing information off the top of my head.
But I do think that that's a good question. So not just our students who have might not have internet access from home on emergency days, but what about the rest of the year too? Is that kind of where that's coming from, right?
Yes.
I was thinking is that you hand them out in November, and then this way, if they have to be activated, I would assume with Verizon, all you do is just go and activate it.
Okay, so you're
And then
saying
this way they have it if they need it, even though throughout the year they probably do have internet, but this way it's not so spotty.
so possibly giving them out, but them not being activated until they need to be. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I don't know if we do we do any type of surveys or at registration? How do we find out when there are students who do not have internet access? So do you ask those families or those?
We did during COVID. Normal years we're not, and currently, I would say pretty much every one of our high schools uses internet almost a daily basis.
I would agree that for the most part,
To do homework. I mean, if you got Google,
daily basis.
Google Classroom and stuff. And you can hold on to that, Mr. DeBailey. I have a question for you, and possibly Mr. Lister as well. But is there any possibility that those dual credit students, I mean, if you have a snow day, there's no school, what about, can you have some type of instruction for those dual credit students on those snow days, or can we not do anything like that?
That's a contractual issue, I will say.
Okay, I can see that.
But I will say this. My son in the dual credit last year, he was done before
Okay, so, and maybe this is off of that. So this is a question out of ignorance, okay? If you're, most of someone's classes are, if I have a dual credit class and my date for everything to be done is May 31st, but we're going to school through June 5th, I'm done with that class as of May 31st. But, and so this might, again, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but it's like, what about those 5 days that there's nothing? And I say there's nothing, I'm sure you have stuff for your students, but it's just not graded at that point. Do you kind of, I think you kind of know where I'm going with that, not non-question question.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. So in the case of when we end our instruction at the end of the semester, we're following the calendar provided by Blackhawk College typically. I already start the semester early. So I already take advantage of some extra time. We start in January. Technically, Blackhawk doesn't start until usually sometimes 2 or 3 weeks into January. Their other coursework does not start until when they take when the other instructors for speech and psych come in. They're getting less instruction than I'm already providing. And I agree with Mr. DeBailey on those days to say that I would be the only individual in our building to do work on that day when Blackhawk College isn't paying me, and I'm currently not receiving a stipend, would be a contractual issue for sure.
Thanks for the information. Anybody else?
So this is Calvin Cruz speaking. I have a question. I know in the past, before e-learning was a possibility and snow days were coming up and on the forecast, I had a teacher say, okay, I'm going to hand you this, go ahead, work on it at home, and then bring it back when we get back to school. Is there anything that prevents us from saying, hey, it's not an official school day, it's not an e-learning day, but hop on and get your stuff done because you still have papers due when we get back? Or this is still the due date, even though it's a snow day?
Yeah, just parent hat on. I mean, that's my daughter does that. She's online doing work on snow days, or she did recently. It's the first time we had snow days, I guess, in a while. But I don't think that there would be anything that would prevent that. I mean, although that's probably up to the individual teachers in the projects on if we were going to change due dates or not. Probably dependent on the situations. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right, anything else? If not, we can move on to district communication, I think. Yes.
How is this going to get communicated to the parents? Just an email?
Well, that's a good lead into the next topic, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
That's a good question, but I mean, one of the things we want to talk about is communication. So how is do we have a plan for communicating the e-learning plan? It's probably out on the website already, right?
So as principals, we had talked about not releasing this until we'd had this meeting to make sure everybody's on the same page. So I guess once we know 100% that everybody's on the same page of what this is all going to look like, we can send that out multiple ways, whether we email it to everybody individually, we can post it on the school website, we can send it through ThrillShare because you can send attachments. There's lots of different ways this can be disseminated. So I also think it's important that teachers talk about it in their classroom so that kids understand those individual requirements that teachers are going to be looking for. Because, like you said, a kindergarten classroom is not going to look like a high school classroom.
For context, for people who are unaware, ThrillShare is our school district website that also pushes out to our Twitter and Facebook feeds.
Okay. Well, the next item up is school district communication. This is something that we've been talking about for a while as a board, probably for a couple years, on and off. But it is much broader than what I'm going to start with here. The reason that this came up initially, every year we go, not all of us, some of the board members go to the school board convention in Chicago. And a couple years ago, Mr. Lowe and I were in a seminar on school district communication. And we recognized that there was an opportunity there where, it's possible that our district, I think it was true of us at the time, that we had an area for improvement with our communication, especially as it comes to social media and stuff like that. So we started talking about the possibility or whether it would be a benefit to the district to have some type of communications coordinator that would, look at our website, what's posted on the website, how things look on the website, make things uniform, different documents, have a standard social media policy on what can be posted, who should be posting for the school, who should be posting for the athletics, the arts, whatever the program was. So that's something we've been talking about for a while. When we presented to the board, Ms. Blommer was really excited about that, and she was talking bigger. So she was thinking where that position could end up leading, looking at video production and stuff, just to kind of market the school a little bit too, market the community, as well as communicate information. We do have the website. We have a way to email parents information, but this district isn't just, we're representing the community too. We have community members who do not have students in the district who want to know what's going on in the district, want to know what we're doing. We think back just recently when our elementary school was under construction and we were putting in the pre-K classrooms and the STEM labs. There might have been people who didn't know what we were doing, and it was an exciting time, I think, and it still holds a lot of possibilities for the future, and there should be a lot of excitement there as we look into different science curriculums in the future too. So we wanted to get input on ways that you feel we could improve as a district in our communication. If you feel like the idea of a paid position for someone who is coordinating communications is a waste of money, if that's a benefit to the community, that would be a good use of our resources. Rather than us just talk about it in our board meetings, though, we wanted to receive input from the community on what your thoughts were. So if you have any questions about that, if you have any questions about how we communicate currently, if you have any areas of improvement you think that you want to voice, now is an opportunity for you to have that.
So changes that we made since Mr. Kaiser and Mr. Lowe went to that, we at that time we did not have a phone app. We did that, and we also changed our web carrier to the ThrillShare. It's called Aptigee actually, and that allows us to have that Facebook and some of the other social media things that we use. I'm not up on social media. I do the Facebook and don't use too much of the other ones. But anyway, we communicate that way. We also revamped the newsletter last month. Some things were good. Some things received some feedback that we need to continue to improve. So we are listening. So if you have concerns with what's getting posted, or you want more posted on Facebook or the other social media outlets that we're using, contact the building principals. Some of our staff has been through training on that. We can continue to do that. And then also the newsletter is a work in progress. And Mr. Lowe and Miss Sherry Schulenberg put a lot of work into making those changes. And we know we're going to continue to make it even better. So feel free to contact us if you have input on those things.
Does anybody else on the board, administration, have any comments that they would like to make? Anything that they would like to share? Anything you've heard on this topic?
I would like to see that. I know that we just said, Mr. DeBailey down there, that you're going to email the student remote e-learning plan, as well as with the website and thrill share. Can we also add that to the newsletter as well?
And I want to give our teachers credit. I have a student in the district in Mine app. We get 4 or 5 messages. We get 4 or 5 messages every week as far as what they're doing in class. If my student did something well. So I feel like as a parent, our staff does speaking at CR Hannah, does a really nice job of contacting us as parents. So I do appreciate that. I don't know if we want any more contact, but between phone messages, reminding people when we get out of school early, when we don't have school, and I get people telling me those are frustrating, but the reason we put those out when we have school improvement days and we get out at 11:30, if we don't put that out, we're bringing kids back to school because parents forget it's a half day and they're at work. And so we do that because, and Julie's sitting here shaking her head, we have to do that so we don't come back with 20 kids because parents forgot it was a half a day. So there is method to the madness when we put those messages out before breaks.
Thank you, Mr. Blessman. Does anybody here have anything that they would like to share? Any perspectives, any ideas? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Heather.
Well, I just want to say, I think what we really need to know is where we're lacking. Like that is what we need people to tell us. I use this as an example all the time, and I'm sure you guys have heard me say it at board meetings. There are other districts, for example, Rockridge does a really good job of promoting everything that they're doing from whatever activities from at all levels, all school levels. And so if you ever want to take a look at their social media, the only thing I look at is Facebook, but I assume they have other social media. They do a really good job of just promoting the district. So those are the types of things that we want to know as a board. You know, what is it? What is it that you don't feel like you know about? I've heard parents say they didn't know they had a high schooler for the first time, and they didn't know that we got to charge a grand every day with information with what's going on at the high school. So those are the kind of things that, you know, they're little things, but they're big, and we really want to make sure that everyone is getting the information. And the other thing is, I think that when there's a question about where should we publicize something, for example, the e-learning protocol, I think we should err on the side of over publicizing it, making it available all over the place, because I think that you're more likely to get some attention. But I can't stress enough that we really, really want input as far as what is lacking and where we need to improve with regard to communications. And I know that's something that Amy and I have, we want to start working on in greater detail. So again, we need feedback in order to be able to do that.
I was commenting something similar to what Heather had to say. It's so important that we hear from you what you guys want to see. I feel like it's important to advertise our district. People that are thinking about moving into town, you know, when they pull us up, there's not much there. We really need to sell ourselves. And, you know, grandparents that are out of town, aunts and uncles, you know, people that want to know what's going on with the kids that they love and care about. We need to balance that with what's too much, privacy issues, things like that. So, like Heather said, we need to know what you guys think we need to have. You know, it needs to be beefed up, but in what direction do we want to go?
And also, when we say we're lacking, we know that there are some individuals that do a good job. You know, we're not saying that everybody's lacking, but for the district as a whole, I think we just feel that there's an area for improvement there. And I think that when Mr. Lowe and I were talking about this initially, you know, one of the things that we were talking about was there's a lot of good things that we're doing in the district, and there's a lot that can be celebrated. So what's the best way to celebrate that and to let people know about that information? Does anybody have anything that they would like to share? Thoughts, perspectives? It's going to be a short town hall meeting. Yeah, Mr. Blessman just said that if you had anything, you could feel free to email him. You can email the board. Those emails go to the board secretary, and she'll disseminate them to the rest of the group. You know, I'm glad to see the people. I'm glad to see you here for the people that are in the room. If you don't know anybody on the board, you know, we'd love to meet you. So I'll be sticking around for a while. I don't think I'll stick around till 8, but I'll be here for a little while if you wanted to come up and say hello. If you have anything that you want to share with us that you didn't want to share in a group setting, we want to make sure that we're available for everybody. So I'm sure that everybody on the board feels that same way. So we're happy to talk to you about your concerns or things that you think are going well, that we need to throw some more support behind as well. So.
Starting tomorrow.
The question was if the e-learning plan would be on the website starting tomorrow. So to answer your question, Mrs. Nightingale, it will be put on the website tomorrow. Yep.
And if we didn't cover a topic tonight and you want that topic discussed, one of the things that Mr. Kaiser, our president, put on our agendas is new topics of discussion. So if there's something that you're like, I wish they would discuss this, I really want input on this, contact myself or Mr. Kaiser. We can get it on an agenda, even if it's just not an action item, initially just an information kind of discussion to get the conversation at least going on it. So if there's a topic and you want it to be discussed or you want some input, contact Mr. Kaiser or myself, because on the president's report, one of the things I believe we'll be putting our future topics of discussion.
All right. Does anybody else have anything? The board meetings have been going fairly short recently. I didn't expect this one to go that short. Well, not the last month, but anybody else? If not, we shall get a motion to adjourn. Nightingale, do we have a second? Nightingale, Hoftender. Any questions? Any discussion on that? All right, Bobby, we can have a roll call vote. Yes. Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks for coming. We'll be sticking around for a while.